There are nearly 20,000 murders annually in the United States.
Perhaps it's the weather, but the Pacific Northwest has become the notorious home of serial killers and bizarre crimes.
We're here to discuss those murders,
To try to understand the motives,
respect and remember the victims.
and explore the humanity of it all.
I'm Emily Rowney.
And I'm Alisha Holland.
And this is Murder in the Rain. In 1986, two young girls, both blonde, blue-eyed, and riding bikes, went missing 5 months apart. Their bodies were found in local parks, having been sexually assaulted and then murdered. The city of Tacoma, Washington, was sure that there was yet another serial killer on the loose, a monster who targeted pubescent girls. Michelle Welch, a bespectacled girl with almond-shaped blue eyes, was 12 years old the day she went missing. About 10 a.m., March 26, 1986, Michelle took her two younger sisters to Puget Park to play. This was just before their piano lesson, which happened to take place just across the street. Before lunchtime, the girls realized they forgot to bring their packed lunches, so Michelle decided to ride her bike home, pick up the sandwiches, and bring them back for her sisters. While she was at home getting the lunches, her younger sisters walked down the road to use the bathroom of a local business. This was kind of far, so they expected to find their sister back in the park when they returned. When they got there, though, all they saw was Michelle's bike locked up and their lunches on the picnic table. No Michelle. Like many siblings and families, they had a unique call that they would use to signal each other when they were looking for them. The little girls called out to Michelle, "Doo!" There was no response. The girls knew something wasn't right, so they called their mom, Barbara. Police arrived on scene shortly after 3 p.m. to begin the search. They began canvassing the area and speaking with potential witnesses. One witness claimed to have spotted her around 1:30 speaking to an unidentified man. This was the last recorded sighting of young Michelle. The man was noted as being possibly Hispanic, 25 to 35, 5'8", with black hair and light-colored clothing. A 13-year-old classmate of Michelle's also reported to police that she saw a man underneath the Proctor Bridge, which was located inside the park, and that he kept looking over at the girls frequently, gave her the heebie-jeebies. She described him as white, 5'9", in his mid-20s, and wearing a Canadian tuxedo. Okay, she said jeans and a jean jacket.
But, that's the official
Same
term.
thing. Soon it was dark, and police knew it was time to call in search and rescue. And to assist in this, they actually brought a group of trained search dogs as well. One dog led police to Michelle's body. They found her in a makeshift fire pit in a gulch just after 11 p.m.
Oh my gosh. That was really...
It was fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So she had been beaten, sexually assaulted. She had a knife wound at her throat. And in early reports, they said that the cut to the neck was actually her cause of death. But it was later determined that her cause of death was the blunt force trauma to her head from the beating. Michelle's body was swabbed and DNA from the killer was collected, even though at the time there wasn't a whole lot they could do with DNA. Neither of the men who were witnessed in the park were ever confirmed as being located by the police. However, sketches were made up and circulated, and tips began pouring in.
Also, how hard is it? Like, it's hard enough to get a witness that's going to be accurate, let alone these children that are in a park. So it's like, probably...
I know, you ignore kids all the time, right?
Right. Exactly. And it's like they're probably talking about the same person, but it's like, yeah, I think he was Hispanic and this tall, and yeah, he was probably this old. I'm like,
I think some of the people there were regulars,
right?
But Michelle was pretty well known, and a lot of her classmates were there, so maybe it was a little more reliable.
Well, I just mean as far as the men go, because like,
yeah,
when you're
but
a
wouldn't
kid,
it weird you out if you're 13 and you see your 13-year-old friend talking to some person you've never seen? You might actually pay attention.
True, but just perception too. I remember being 13, being like, I think they're 40
because sure,
they're older than me. So
I would
they're
never
definitely
believe a
40.
kid that says mid-20s.
Yeah.
Chloe thinks I'm 20, or she did for a while,
right? And like 5'9", I'm like,
or she'll be
no.
like, my teacher's the same age as you, and you meet them and they're 20 years older. Cool, thanks.
Yeah,
kid.
so that's a little not helpful, but at least there's something out there.
It is, but they did get a tip that was pretty important that later they realized was important. At the time, it was just another tip. But someone had called in a man who claimed to have seen one of the men in the sketches at another park. So a park was nearby, but it was actually called Point Defiance Park.
So it matches up. It's a good direction.
Well, it was in Puget Park is when it happened, and he's saying in another park.
Well,
he
yeah,
saw
but
the
park
guy.
to park, you know.
5 months later, another young girl went missing in Point Defiance Park, just a little over 3 miles away from where Michelle was found. Jennifer Bastin, who went by Jenny, was 13 years old and training for a YMCA bike tour of Lopez Island. Jenny planned a bike ride with a friend on her brand new Schwinn bike, but her friend backed out. Since the bike tour was so important to Jenny, she wanted to make sure she did a good job in the race. She decided to go ahead and train without her friend. She took her bike out at 2:30 p.m. on August 4th, 1986. Her plan was to ride the 30 blocks from her house to Point Defiance Park, where she could do the 5-mile drive, a popular paved path that looped through the park. She had permission to do this ride, but she was expected home at 6:30 p.m., as per the note she left her mom. Hours past the time she was expected home, her father called her mother, who worked the late shift, to let her know that Jenny had never come home. They alerted the police, and a search kicked off. Late that night, police asked Jenny's parents for a piece of her clothing. Their search was not successful, and they decided to bring in scent dogs to help. For 3 days, police closed the Point Defiance Park to do a thorough search for young Jenny. Hundreds of people joined together to scour the park, and she was not located. Was Jenny kidnapped? Was she hurt? Was she lost? For weeks, Jenny's family agonized as they ran through every nightmare scenario in their minds. But then, the news no parent wants to receive. Finally, after 3 weeks, a couple of joggers discovered Jenny's body. Her and her bike were well hidden in the brush near 5 Mile Drive. She had been raped and strangled to death. The police located DNA in the crotch of the swimsuit she had been wearing, which was now found pulled around her ankles. Due to the eerie similarities of both of these cases, police were quick to determine there was a serial killer on their hands. This, of course, sent the city into a frenzy. Families were hesitant to let kids play outside or walk to school, fearing that any given moment one of them could be plucked up, raped, and murdered. Over the years, there have been many suspects. In fact, there were 2,300 names in the case files for these two little girls.
Wow.
That's what happens when you have a case that's been open for 30 years. 30 years, and the hunt for these little girls yielded little more than uncovering some regular Joes, some perverts, and some more murderers, just not the ones that committed these crimes. So who are the suspects? Let's talk about a couple of these gems that stand out.
We're not going through all 2,000?
No, I figured maybe we just pull a couple out.
Oh, that seems
We
fair.
could do some Patreon episodes of the rest of them.
Number 1,322.
All right, so suspect number 1, who looks like a possibility, David Fisher. On December 6th, 1989, a special broadcast played on TV outlining the case of Michelle and Jenny. So after the broadcast, a man named David Fisher was arrested. And let me tell you about this guy because he's a real piece of work. So at 29 years old, he worked at a Tacoma pet store. This is in 1970. In June, Laura Burbank began visiting the store regularly, and the two struck up a friendship. Only one problem. Laura was 13.
Ooh,
This
gross.
wasn't strange for David, though, because he was actually married to a 16-year-old girl who was pregnant with their first child. Let that sink in.
Oh, 1970,
1970.
right? Washington?
He's 29 and she's 16, and he's now striking up a friendship with a 13-year-old. I know, it's gross. So Laura would visit the store all the time. She was very into animals, and some witnesses claim that she had told them that this guy was going to teach her how to train monkeys. That was like his in with her is, you come to the store, I'll teach you how to do this.
Man, the 70s were a wild time.
What? Monkeys,
16-year-old
married to children.
wives.
So on June 30th, Laura had plans to go to a park with her sister and her friend. However, the plans didn't work out, and she decided to just go alone. When she didn't return home, her father went looking for her and then alerted police. A witness in the park mentioned having seen a pet store van in the park at the time of the disappearance.
We got a park prowler.
So Fisher was questioned. He, of course, denied being friends with Laura, and he claimed that at the time that the pet van was located or noticed in the park, he was actually home with his wife and it couldn't have been him. But then David's wife actually went into the police station. So she said that late one night, she wasn't sure exactly what day, but late one night, he demanded that she would wash his jeans. They were really, really dirty. And she thought this was abnormal because he was known for being a super neat dresser. In the entire time they've been together, he was never considered dirty or disheveled. So it stood out to her. And then 2 weeks after the disappearance, she found a pair of female underwear in his stuff. So it was in his belongings. And when she told police this, they automatically were thinking trophy. He's keeping something about his crime.
And you have your 16-year-old wife doing your laundry late at night who's pregnant. Ugh, this
Yeah,
guy.
it's gross, right? All right, so 3 months later, after the disappearance, Laura's body was discovered by a group of kids playing in the woods. She had been sexually molested and murdered by blunt force trauma. So again,
Sounds
to the
familiar.
head. Yep. Police decided to go ahead and arrest David, but he fled. So about 8 days later, he actually surrendered, and he was hoping that they would be lenient with him and let him be present for the birth of his first child. But of course, the police were like, no. We're going to go ahead and arrest you. Since the evidence was all circumstantial, they decided the best case of action was to do a plea deal. So he actually pled second-degree murder, guilty to second-degree murder, and then he went to prison. So in prison, he was a model of good behavior, and because of this, they assigned him to their minimum security honor farm. So they're basically just out in the farm like a regular worker. There's not really
Right.
a
It's
fence
not a
or
restrictive
anything.
environment.
Exactly. So he's like, cool, I'm leaving. So he's been there for 4
Bye,
years.
guys.
He
I'm good.
decides, I'm leaving. And it was hours before anyone noticed. They didn't notice till bedtime. So he's got a significant amount of hours ahead of them and they can't find him. So he's basically gone. No one sees him again until the broadcast of Michelle and Jenny's case. A neighbor, I think, somebody sent a tip in and said, hey, I know this guy. And they apprehended him in Canada in 1990. And his new family, he had a wife and kids. They had no idea that he wasn't who
So
he said
he had
was.
just abandoned the 16-year-old
Yep.
and the baby. So he's got a child somewhere.
Yeah.
And also this whole idea of like, they're a model prisoner.
They're there for a reason, friends.
And it's like, that's not the environment that they're not good in.
I know.
That's like when people are like, no, this person's not racist. They have black friends. It's like serial killers have people around them that aren't dead. Like,
yeah.
just because you're good in prison, I guess if he was in a park around kids, he probably would be not such a good model.
So suspect number 1 sounds pretty good.
I mean, I'll put my money on that one.
All right. Okay. So number 2, Guy Rasmussen. 3 p.m., July 4th, 1996. 9-year-old Cynthia Allinger, who goes by Cindy, told her mom she was going to walk down the road to go to her friend's house, which was just a few houses away. She never made it to her friend's house. So at 11 p.m., when Cindy's mom realized it, her mom's name is Rhonda Plank, she called police to report her missing. And then while she's on the call with the police, she makes a comment that she thinks a guy named Guy Rasmussen did it, that he had something to do with it. Which seems a little weird for her to know that.
Yeah.
But what had happened was the neighbor, I don't know if it's the neighbor her daughter was planning to go to or another one, said she had seen her daughter earlier that day holding hands with this guy. Okay.
And how was he known?
He was in the neighborhood. So he was someone, and I'll get to that, but he lived in the area. So Guy Rasmussen is actually a convicted sex offender. He has multiple records against him, one for the rape of a 15-year-old and another for a 10-year-old. The local kids in the neighborhood all called him Raz. So isn't that sweet? A local pedophile has a nickname with the kids.
And remember, you can always go to crimewatch.com. Check your neighborhood.
Anyway, so he was actually a former neighbor that he moved to a trailer still within the vicinity of the neighborhood, but he's not like a neighbor next to them anymore. So people knew who he was. They recognized him.
Old Razzmatazz.
And I mean, you can't miss that mullet, I'm telling you.
Oh.
So 2 weeks after her disappearance, her body was found rolled in a carpet not far from her house. She had suffered pretty significantly, so I'm going to have to say trigger warning here, just in case if you want to fast forward. The medical examiner noted that she had been burned with cigarettes and beaten in the face so badly that it resulted in a broken jaw. She then had her underwear stuffed down her throat to gag her, and she ended up dying after being raped or during by being strangled. Multiple witnesses had seen Rasmussen with Cindy. So it wasn't just the one neighbor.
Right.
Multiple people came forward in different parts of the neighborhood claiming that they saw him holding hands, kind of pulling her along with him. Not forceful.
Right, but just, we're going this way.
Exactly.
And she was how old? I'm sorry.
9. When police investigated Rasmussen, they found that he had clothing in his home that had Cindy's DNA on it. So they were able to very quickly match what they found on his clothing to her body since they had it in the morgue. He was ultimately charged with rape and murder in the first degree. The jury was split on the death penalty, so he ended up just going to prison with a life sentence, no parole. So he's out there still. And in 2014, he actually is working with lawyers to try and get the DNA retested, working with
Innocence Project?
Innocence Project, yeah.
Really?
Because, I mean, Washington has one of the highest rates of exoneration for DNA retesting.
Right.
So he was trying to get on that train. But lo and behold, later that year, he stepped back and pulled it because prosecution was like, go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. We know our case is solid. We stand behind everything. There's no circumstantial evidence here.
And Innocence Project is really thorough about what cases they take and when they do it.
Yeah, so
like,
it may just not have gone anywhere and
yeah.
he stopped, but he was trying to work with them on that.
Wow. Nice try, scumbag.
So here's the thing about these two guys. They look perfect on paper for these murders, but it wasn't them. They were never arrested and charged.
Really?
In the end, they were basically determined to have not been possibly the suspects.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it
they
on the
moved
second guy because it doesn't match up. Like the torture and
yeah, that's pretty
like, it
dark.
doesn't.
The first guy, though,
The
it
first
sounds
guy's
a
like
lot like
checking
it.
all the boxes.
But it is also convenient. The blunt force trauma is like pretty easy to do with like a tree branch or a rock or your fist. They didn't get very far. They looked into a lot of suspects, but the cases remained open for 30 years. In 2011, Tacoma created a cold case unit to focus on over 150 local cases. The cases of Michelle and Jenny were taken on by this team. So by this time, we're coming into a new era, an exciting time for cold cases because we've progressed so much with the science of DNA testing. So we're lucky because the DNA collection was happening even before they knew that we were going to progress this much. It's like somebody innovative enough to like realize this is the future. Let's collect it, get a lot of swabs. So they have a lot of DNA. So it's like a perfect fit to go back and check these cases. Because now we're seeing the science being able to take really small samples and learn so much
Right.
from them. So they're, you know, one little DNA goes a long way these days.
I'm also fascinated with, on the flip side, how the science is progressing so much. It's canceling out this like debunked science, you know, fire science is being questioned now,
Right.
and biting
Because they realize how
forensics
thorough
and-
they can be.
Right.
Definitely. So the young people that were children when this case happened are now grown up, and some of them have actually gone into law enforcement because of these cases. And one of these people is Detective Lindsay Wade. So she's actually from Tacoma. She knew about this case. She read a book in college about Ted Bundy and decided, you know, I want to do this. I want to solve these cases. So she worked her way up through the ranks, became a detective, and in 2013, she joined Detective Gene Miller on the Tacoma cold case unit. So they were leading it together. They decided, you know, let's get our fresh eyes on this case. Where do we start? DNA. Let's start there. So Michelle's case had plenty of DNA. It was found all over her body. So, and since she was found within the same day, it's like a perfect case for DNA because it was untouched. When they sent it to the lab for analysis, it did not have a matching CODIS, but now they at least have a profile to work with. So they can put it in, and now any other DNA that they come through CODIS, it would match to her case.
And I would imagine they could at least narrow down, say it's this genetic makeup, and so
Yeah,
you get
they
skin,
had
eyes,
a profile.
hair, all, yeah.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that in a minute. Now, Jenny's case was a little bit harder because, as you remember, she was found 3 weeks. So she was
Right.
significantly decomposed, which isn't so great for DNA. Thanks to some advice from the Center of Missing and Exploited Children, Wade and Miller decided to check the swimsuit again for DNA, and they were able to pull a viable swab for testing. So they weren't totally out of luck there. As true crime fans across the world know, fans like us, DNA testing is a game changer. You can learn some very interesting things, and this case was no different. So when the samples from both cases were compared, police were shocked to find out that the DNA samples did not match.
No.
They were not one killer, as everyone expected for decades. That's what they thought. That's what they were looking for. There were, in fact, 2 totally different profiles, 2 different murderers, both focusing on children.
That is shocking.
I know. In 2014, Detective Wade was now leading the cold case unit, and she decided to consult with Colleen Fitzpatrick. This is a doctor who is an expert in forensic genealogy, which is really hip these days, right? We've heard about it with the Golden State Killer. Bear Brook covers it. So it's a kind of a new way that we're using DNA to find mainly victims, locating like missing children. Like if you find a kid and you have no idea who they are, you can look them up using forensic genealogy. So forensic genealogy is the use of DNA that has been submitted by civilians to public databases. So we know these like 23andMe. I did one last year.
Ancestry.com.
Yeah, you spit into a vial, you send it in, and then you can see all your cousins. She is proposing, let's use this to try to narrow down who these people are, which is kind of there's a debate going on with it, but she said, I don't know if I trust it, but why not give it a try? We have 2,300 people, so let's at least try to narrow it down. So what Fitzpatrick did was compare the DNA they had with all the DNA in the public databases that she could have access to, and they narrowed it down. So soon they found a name that stood out, and the name was Washburn. So it's weird that it stood out because it was already in the case file, but not as a suspect. This was a witness in Michella's case. If you recall, I mentioned a witness who had called police to say someone in Point Defiance Park looked an awful lot like the sketch from Puget Park in Michella's case. But now Dr. Fitzpatrick is saying the DNA from Jenny's case matches someone from the family Washburn, who was the witness in Michella's case.
What?
Simultaneously to working with the forensic genealogist, the DNA from each case was sent to a company called Parabon. That's another company that's pretty widely recognized these days because they're helping in a lot of these cases. So what they were doing was helping to build a profile of the killers using DNA. And they were looking for markers on hair color, eye color, skin tone, body type, and then they could develop a computer-generated image of the suspect. And in 2016, Tacoma police told the public, hey, it's not one killer. We have 2. So that was mind-blowing for a lot of people. And then they now had the computer images to show the differences between the 2 men. Detective Wade went back out to look at high-priority suspects. So these were mainly men who had backgrounds in pedophilia and violence. Thought that's the quickest way to kind of narrow down. Because even though they have a possible suspect, they're still looking for another case entirely. They have no leads there yet. They go through this list looking at DNA to eliminate suspects. For months they're doing this. So they're sending DNA in batches of 20 to be tested. Just going through this list of 2,300 people, starting with these predators. Right. So over and over to a year later, Wade's like, I'm going to retire, which is crazy because she's not that much older than us. But she's like, I'm going to retire. This is terrible. I've done everything I can. So she puts in the final batch, 18 people, and retires. 25 days into retirement, she gets a phone call from her replacement to say, hey, we got a match. And his name is Robert Washburn. Robert Washburn, the man who had called for the tip in Michella's case, was at the end of the long list because he was not a high priority. He had no record whatsoever. But he's now identified as the primary suspect in a rape and murder case. He's living in the Midwest, and the police contacted him to get his DNA, and he offered it. So he knew they were like eliminating
Onto him, right.
No, he just thought, oh, I'm eliminating myself from this 2,000 people. They're never going to catch me. If he sends it in, bing, bang, boom, they have a match. So now her case is closed. Jenny's case is solved. We know who it is. Court system takes over. But we still have Michela's case.
And did they ever figure out, like, in your research, did they ever say, like, anything he said as to why he called in?
We'll talk about it a little later, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a big question I think a lot of people had on their mind. So we still have Michela's case open. In 2018, police went to Parabon again to try to get more help with Michela Welch's case. By looking for DNA that was publicly available, they were able to match with family members in the system. So they, from all of the thousands of people in there, were able to narrow down to 2 brothers. And from there, they're like, let's just follow them around and get some DNA, because now we don't have 2,000 we're going through now.
Right,
we just have these 2 people. This is really easy. So the police followed him around, and one of the brothers was at a restaurant. So the cop just went in and got a napkin from his plate after the waitress took it. And it was a match. So then they pulled him over for a traffic violation and arrested him, which was probably a shock for him.
Right.
I don't think he had any clue. People will like say these 2 guys they just look like an old grandpa, like someone who just would never hurt a fly, and they have no record. Neither of them, no record. This guy, he's a nurse, like caring for people. Yeah, he's a murderer. It's just mind-blowing. So this month, the subject in Michela Welch's case, Gary Hartman, was charged with first-degree murder. This investigation is still going, though. Police are currently using warrants to search his residence and his work. So we have a lot to look forward to. I'm sure they'll strike a plea just to kind of save the families. But maybe we'll see a big trial. But I think they have a lot of evidence to look through, and there are a lot of cold cases, so maybe they're going to find some connection. Now, Jenny Bastin's murderer, Robert Washburn, agreed to a plea deal. So he, as part of his plea deal, he had to say he was guilty to first-degree murder. In exchange, there was no like rape charge or anything. He gets a 320-month sentence with no death penalty. Now, they said you're required to tell the court what happened to her, and all he gave was a couple of sentences. He said he grabbed her arm, yanked her into the woods, and strangled her. No other detail. No reason why he did it. Didn't talk about the rape. And her family clearly doesn't think that's enough. Like, they want to know, was it premeditated? Was it spur of the moment? They still hold out hope that he will eventually tell them. So I think everyone's happy he didn't get death penalty. Maybe he's going to be more likely to tell them what happened.
And that's kind of fascinating. Like, will there ever be enough information for them? You
Well,
know, because it's like,
no. Well, the one
how
thing
does that?
her mom wants to know, why did he call in the tip? I think he was planning it. I think it was premeditated. He's like, oh, this guy somebody raped someone. I want to do that. I could blame them and I can get away with it. Like planting that he saw.
Yeah, like a copycat.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's in the same park. It is a huge park. So it is hard to find people. But
2 questions.
Yeah.
About how old were these guys when it happened? Like back in
their
the
20s.
80s? In their 20s?
Yeah.
And
so they're 60s now.
20s
20s or 30s maybe, because I think they're in their 60s now. It's been 34 years.
And then do either of them, I haven't seen their pictures yet, do they match anything of what was, I mean, obviously not
one of the
his
sketches I think is pretty close. But again, he was so young and now they're like white haired and they were blonde. It's interesting.
Wow.
I don't think those sketches led to anyone like, I know that guy.
But how wild if, like, with this other guy, they start running all this stuff and they get to close a bunch of cases or something.
Well, this is what I hoped for. So this is great. I'm really glad we've closed these cases, and it is what people are calling like a new type of investigation. Now we're in this whole new world of DNA where you cannot hide as a killer. Like, you have nowhere to go because you can't control if your family members upload their DNA to GenMatch or whatever. Anybody can do that. And lo and behold, dad over here is a murderer. You just don't know. But I'm thinking about all these other cases and really excited to see if they're able to get anything. So because of that, I pulled a few cases that are very similar. And I'm assuming the cops are looking into this right now. So let's just talk about these a little bit.
Yeah.
So Carla Wright, 12 years old, she had asked her mother for a ride to school on January 7th, 1980. But mom had a doctor's appointment, so she said no, walk, get your ass to school. So at 8 a.m. that morning, she left for school and took a shortcut to Gray Junior High. But she never showed up to school. She never came home. Her mother reported her missing. They couldn't find her. 12 days later, her body was found near the trail she had walked, hidden under a piece of plastic, and she had been raped and strangled. Angela Meeker, 13, went missing July 7th, 1979. She was on her way to Tacoma Mall to pick up a birthday card for her friend, and the last person to see her was a male acquaintance who said he gave her a ride to the Payless shoe store, and no one has ever seen her since. Shalisa Lewis, 14, stepped off the bus on her way home from school February 2nd, 1996. 3 weeks later, her body washed ashore at Seattle's Discovery Park. There were no signs of struggle, and her death was ruled a homicide by drowning. Her final words were left in her diary, and it read, "Dear God, I know you have a reason for everything, and it all works out in the long run, but I just don't get it."
Whoa, haunting.
I know. Andriana Jackson, 10, went missing the morning of December 2nd, 2005, while she walked from her apartment to her school, Tillicum Elementary. She didn't know it, but school had been canceled that day due to weather. The following spring, 2 boys found her body in a bush less than 2 miles from her home.
So they never found a body.
Oh, of Angela Meeker?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she was one that disappeared, but no body ever turned up. And why this is important is part of the case, part of the whole story that really gives me rotten tummy. I found the most unsettling. I mean, everything is rotten tummy.
Oh, yeah.
But
None
the
of it's
most
pleasant.
unsettling for me is that guy Rasmussen. And that's because he knew both Carla Wright and Angela Meeker.
Really?
Yeah, so Carla Wright's the 12-year-old who her mom wouldn't drive her to school. And then Angela Meeker is the one that went to the mall and nobody has ever been found.
And that's old Razzmatazz that everyone knew in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so he has connections to them, yet he's never been arrested. I know he's a primary suspect, but I think there's just no evidence linking him, so they haven't moved on him. And he's in prison for life, so I don't know. I just think it's so unsettling.
Hard because it's like, do we spend resources, people,
Proving
time, money to prove this thing when we don't even have a
it's
body?
happened so long ago.
But that gives the family closure, and then you've got this predator off the streets. Like, that's a really tough.
It's just, I hate it. I hate it because I think he did it.
Well, yeah.
I mean, the good news is we are starting to solve cold cases. The detectives work really, really hard on these to try to solve them, and even into retirement. We've seen that with the Golden State Killer. Like, the people that solved that were on retirement. So I think that's awesome. But I also want to take a moment to just give props to my favorite, the Center of Missing and Exploited Children. That's something I actually donate to personally. I think they're awesome. I mean, they spend their time doing so much good. In the Bear Creek? Is that what? Yeah, Bear Creek podcast. They even reference that the way they connected two crimes was a caseworker who worked for them. So she noticed,
These
that's
are
a
matching
similar
up a little
area. I
bit.
looked on a map, saw they were 20 minutes away, and was like, I think we should maybe look into this. So, I mean, they work really hard and go above and beyond. So, consider donating to them. And if you can't donate, what I highly recommend that I spent my weekend doing, which is really depressing, is you look at their website, look at the kids, look at the people who are missing, look at their faces, note where they live. You might have information that will help us locate them, and you don't even know it.
I always do that too. You get those the coupons, the clipper thing that comes in the mail,
Yeah,
even
just
though
look
you're
at
like,
them.
why am I on this list? But there's always that
Yeah.
picture at the bottom. I always look to just be like, is it anywhere near me? Is it anything I might know? And then I put it in recycling.
I think we don't really, maybe I saw a pet van in a park. If I didn't
Right.
say anything, we wouldn't have had that circumstantial evidence to help lock that guy
paying
up. So,
attention to what's around you for sure.
the old see something, say something. It's worth it. So if you do have a tip to report, you can call 1-800-THE-LOST or go on their website, missingkids.com, where you can leave a tip. You can also, if there's any child abuse that you're worried about, you can submit it there to be looked into as well.
And like we were talking about earlier, whatever it takes to the stuff that they have to deal with, the things they look at, the things they hear and see and deal with on a daily basis, like that is not easy work to do.
They're
And
superheroes. Like I can't imagine. Like, it's funny. I work with tech people. You call them, like, it's just funny to think, like, a very few subset of them work in the industry that has to look at this stuff. And I mean, it's just awful, but somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to put them away. So one thing I wanted to ask you.
Oh boy.
What are your thoughts on using these public DNA databases?
I get torn because on one hand, I feel like, you know, part of my brain's like, I'm not submitting that because the government doesn't need to know all my stuff.
But even if you don't, your family,
right,
you have no control over all of your DNA on it.
So I think it's awesome that it's being used in this good way. But with any type of technology like that, it's like, what are the limits and what are the parameters and who gets to access? Like, how soon are we in Minority Report? You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, that's what I was thinking of on the way here. So, I mean, the good thing that I don't think everybody knows is police can't just go to any of those websites and look at that public
there's
stuff.
just the one.
They have one, GEDmatch,
Right.
which is you're uploading your report to it and
For
giving
that
consent.
reason.
Right.
Yeah.
So, hey guys, if you want to help solve these things, you can take your report and load it to GEDmatch and be
you
part
can
of that.
Finally put that creepy uncle of yours away.
It's like, hey, do you want him in your family anyway? Get rid of him. Come on.
Imagine how much nicer Thanksgiving will be.
No, seriously. But I mean, the argument is, yes, this is great for crimes that have already happened and narrow it down. The worry is we're going to start using it to try to locate people before they do it, like Minority Report. I thought that's like, oh, you have a tendency for psychological disorders? Put them on our list, you know?
Well, and the other concern too is crime scenes are not always perfect and things get mixed up. And it's like, so, you know, if you're taking DNA from a scene, you know, obviously there are times where it's where you take the DNA from, it's pretty obvious that that person was at the scene. But there are times where there are items around the person and they're like, oh, look, we found this hair clip or we found this garbage. You know, we talked about that Green River Killer episode where it's like he would put other things there.
DNA there.
And it's like, oh, if you found some gum in the hair of this victim because I happened to toss my gum out the window and didn't know there was a body there. And now you're doing all this match. And then next thing you know, you have a warrant for my arrest based on all this stuff, which is factual but mixed up. Like that's something in my head of just like,
but that's not going to be enough to put you in jail. Like they use it as a map to get to someone, and then they do the testing to really get them. You know, like,
right? But that's all I'm saying though is that there are times that DNA gets mixed up going to the evidence locker or things like that.
For the most part, it's pretty good and reliable these days. But I totally know what you mean. I'm just such an advocate for getting these creeps off the street that if you're like, okay, this is his brother, now I found him, I'm going to test the DNA, we're going to look for evidence and link him and treat him like a suspect. It's not like, oh, now I have it, you're going to jail.
Yeah.
So I think as long as we keep in mind that you still have to go through the process you would normally go to, it's just getting them there faster. But also, this is really helpful for victims. You know, like I said, you don't know who your parents are, you were found in the desert, they can look you up and within
happens
now 10
all the time.
minutes find an aunt in their database. It's crazy. It's so cool.
No, there's definite good, but you know, with every good thing comes not good things.
Of course. Well, we hopefully won't live that long to have to see that. Just see them get put away.
We're live.
We're
Coming
live
at you live from Vancouver, Washington. Wow. Whoa. We're looking for caller 10.
We're going to call you and pretend it's second date update. I love that segment.
Me too.
I mean, a lot of people just think babies are cute, whatever they look like, they're baby, and
They're
so they're drawn to
blobs or
that.
nothing.
I get people who tell me I am
Chloe's
doing
gorgeous.
a disservice by not having another. I went to the bank, and the guy's like, "Is this your only child?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "You should really think about having more. She's beautiful." And I was like, "That's really sweet, but that's also like."
That is
Kinda
one of
rude.
the creepiest things I have ever
It
heard.
just so happens I have some jizz in my balls for you.
Bespeckled.
Speckled, I said.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She did say
Is that what
bespeckled.
but you're supposed to say bespectacled? Glasses? Are we talking freckles?
I am talking glasses.
Okay.
My understanding, it's bespooked.
I didn't know.
You're talking about someone that was startled, right? Bespookled?
Bespookled. I like that.
Is she okay?
Yeah, she'll be fine.
I messed up. I think I made her real mad.
No, she's just frustrated with herself.
Yeah.
It's fine. This is fun because we can whisper talk about her and she doesn't know that we're talking about her.
All right. So oh no. About 10 a.m. in March 1986, Michelle took her 2 younger sisters to Puget Park to play prior to their piano lesson, which took place just across the street.
I laughed. Well, I laughed at 2 things. One is that one of your sentences had like 8
1,000 P's.
It had a lot of P's, I know. I was actually thinking that is a Puget Park play prior to their piano lesson. I don't know why I'm not reading it.
Okay. Just remember, we can hear you when you smile. Go piss in the parking lot and come see us after you patronize the Plaid Pantry and go to the public park.
With your Pringles.
Ooh, I'm hungry. Okay.
Oh, that's the problem.
Yeah,
go fucking eat something.
There's no.
There's no.
There's no.
There's no.
You're good.
I did that with a friend of mine once when I was like 13 or 14. We just like sat in front of the fridge with it open, and like one of us was blindfolded at a time, and we just take something out of the fridge and feed it to them, and then they would try to guess what it was.
Oh my God, that's so great.
It was really fun.
No, I was like in a group of friends talking, but it was I think my arms were crossed, but it was like the way my feet were perpendicular with my knee like kicked out.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I'm like, why would I get in trouble for that?
That's nuts.
I know, it was so weird. I was just like standing with my friends talking, and to this day it makes me mad. I remember
That is upsetting.
Mackenzie Copeland and her mother.
You hear that, Mackenzie? You little twat.
Whatever. You made out
Yeah.
with John Sayer, and he told everyone how your mouth tasted.
You'd be proud of me. I got in trouble once in my life in school. Well, besides like not passing classes on recess because I accidentally choked a classmate with a jump rope.
I am so proud of you.
Thank you.
I didn't know anyone was on my level.
Yeah.
I actually broke someone's arm.
So we were not allowed to play this game where you use a jump rope to
Strangle each other.
No, not strangle. Too many Ritz.
Oh God, I chewed them too many, and now I can't talk.
I chewed them too many. I chewed these too many.
I was supposed to chew 18 times,
And I
chewed
chewed
24
times.
times.
I was going to say 24.
We both said 24.
Oh my God. Her plan was to ride the 30 blocks from her house to Point Defiance Park, where then she could do the 5-mile drive, a popular paved path that looped through the park.
I like that we're just scared to say anything. We're
We're
like that whole sentence just.
Like let's see what she says, and then we'll laugh maybe. Yeah.
Murder in the Rain is produced and edited by Josh McCullough. Written and hosted by Emily Rowney and Alisha Holland. Artwork by Jamie Costa. Music by Kai Pfeiffer at kyfifer.com. Check out our website, murderintherain.com, for additional information on all cases, a fun interactive map, and be sure to subscribe so you can receive our newsletter. Check out the Mad Props page for coupon codes from some of our sponsors. We love your reviews and seeing them on all streaming platforms, especially iTunes. And check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And suck my balls.
Please put that in.